Hi everyone, welcome back to another continuing ed check-in. It's been a little bit since we've recorded one of these, and so forgive us if we're rusty. I don't think we'll be.
I don't
but
think so.
Today we're bringing back the heat. We're talking about a really relevant and important topic. We're talking about money and how to talk about money in your relationship, if it's actually important, and how to navigate this whole thing, because money changes people. Money is a big deal in our life, and it affects a lot of planning between you and your partner. So we're going to figure out how to do that well. And so we're going to start off with a pretty basic question. When is a good time to talk about money? So you just met someone, you're going on dates. Are you going to wait to have a talk about money until you're official, or is it okay to start talking about like how much you make, or your financial situation while you're still in the talking stage?
I guess, okay, I've never thought about this, like, because now I'm thinking back to, like, being in a talking stage, and I'm like, I don't think I ever knew how much money specifically somebody makes.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of important to understand because, like, you know, in the talking stage, that's when you're going on all these dates.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, like, are we in a position where we would like to, like, split the bill? Are we, like, you know, which is, like, totally fine.
Yeah.
But it's like, I guess maybe you don't officially talk about money, but it comes up.
Yeah, for sure. So if we were to break your relationship into stages, I think in the talking stage, there's no need to bring up the word money. But instead, you're going to be talking, there's going to be a lot of context clues when you talk about your job, when you talk about your family and how you grew up. And so you should already be getting a sense of, is this person in a pretty stable financial situation, or are they in a place where maybe they're in between jobs and they're like living with 4 roommates or something like that. And so I think, especially in the talking stage, you should at least have a general idea. And then also, I think money does kind of come up in the talking stage because, and you should watch our episode on who should pay for the first date, but it's unclear like who's paying for dates, especially when you're just starting off. And so in the talking stage, I don't think it's super important to talk about money, but at least there should be effort on both sides. So even if, let's say, the guy is paying for every date, then the girl is asking good questions and I don't know, maybe she'll pay for dessert after dinner, and putting in effort in other ways. And so money doesn't need to be a big issue, but I think effort does in the talking stage.
Right, I agree.
Okay, so I think once you become official, though, what are your feelings about that, Sania?
I think maybe once you become official, you know, maybe you're starting to discuss, like, oh, like, how much money do you make at said job that you already know about? And, like, you know, you can maybe discuss a little bit about, like, I know I've had people that I talk about, like, you know, financial planning and, like, oh, do you save? Like, do you invest? Like, what do you do? Like, just to get, like, ideas of, like, future projections and what the other person is thinking and how they're thinking and, like, what their planning kind of looks like. Like, do they want to own a property? Do they... like, just, like, ideas of, like, you know, what their financial goals are and how that aligns with your own.
Yeah.
Right?
I love that. And I think the key part in that is figuring out their financial goals. So I think, again, like, you don't have to go into, like, the very specifics, but you can ask, oh, what kind of house would you like to own? And maybe they don't want to own a house. Maybe they're okay renting their whole life.
Right.
And then you can ask them, oh, where would you like to live? And like deeper questions, but that is also giving you a lot of information about financially where they're at.
Even, like, when people talk about how many dogs they want to have or how many kids, like, those are all financial responsibilities.
For sure.
Or, like, how many cars they want to have. Like, did they grow up in a 1-car household, in a 2, or, like, do they expect to have that? What are their views on public transportation? Like, all of those things are giving you those context clues about, like, how this person is, like, financially in their lives.
Exactly. And I think it's important because it's important to note that some people have all these dreams, but maybe they didn't think about the financial implications. And so it's adding to the story that you've been building since the very beginning. So like when you're official, you're talking about like financial goals and stuff. At that point, you kind of know what kind of financial situation they're in. You know, like what job they have, how they're spending money on the weekends.
Right.
And so at this point, then you know their expectations and you know, okay, is this a realistic expectation or not? Because if they really want this stuff and they don't have like a career plan, then it's going to fall on you.
Right.
So it's also a very important thing to keep in mind. And then I think a good gauge on when to like talk about the specifics of money. So your salary, how much is in your investments,
Right.
How much money you have saved up. I think when you're ready to introduce them to your family, I think that's like kind of a good time, because at that point it's serious enough that you see this going somewhere that you would introduce them to the people who are closest to you.
Right.
And like maybe you're not close with your family. I think that's just like that kind of level. When you're introducing them to the people closest to you, that's a good time to get into the more specifics of money.
Even when you're talking about like planning to like live together and things like that, like not like it's happening right now, but like, you know, by the time you're meeting the family and stuff, maybe you're headed towards marriage, you're gonna live together, whatever, like you're about to like have like, you know, instead of seeing each other as like two individuals, you're like seeing that future of like one unit.
Yeah.
And like as one unit, you care what the other person's doing with their money, because now it's like the unit's money.
Right.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's also good to plan for the future a little bit. And so figure out if they want to have a joint bank account, if you guys are living together or if you're married. And then also at that point, it's like, what are things that we want to start saving for? How much would you be okay spending on a wedding? So those are times where that's a time when you can get more specific and ask more pointed questions. And maybe they don't know. That's totally fine. But I think when you're at that level of seriousness in your relationship, it is important to talk about. And it's really important to figure out if they have debt.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's gonna affect you.
Right, because you share your debt also.
You share your debt if you're married.
Right.
Depending if you have a prenup, you can watch that episode. But like their stress and their financial situation, it's going to affect you in some way,
definitely.
shape, or form. Yeah.
And just as you start to spend more and more time with someone, like, you know, when you transition from like going on just dates every week to like now we're spending like all the time together, and when we're not together, we're calling each other. It's like they're just naturally going to see, like you said, that financial stress.
Yeah.
Like, and it's going to start affecting them too, even though it's your financial stress based on your life decisions.
Yeah. Okay, now let's say when you're married, do you feel like your partner should know everything financially?
Okay, like, I think yes.
I agree.
Unless it's like a gift or like a surprise. Like, I was just trying to think situations like, or like, you know, I know people can get into very troubling, embarrassing situations with money or like issues with it. But I feel like, you know, if that's your partner, like that's who's going to help you figure it out. Yeah. So I think there's not really any normal situations where I could think it'd be a good idea to not have them know everything.
Yeah. Something that is interesting to me, but that a lot of people do, is they'll have a joint bank account when they're married, but they'll also have separate bank accounts. And I think the key is when you're married, you have to always be on the same page. And the two of you have to be fully on board with how you're going to manage money. So whether or not you share all your money or you have some separate accounts, to a lot of people, it makes sense to like have their own money in separate bank accounts because they're like, I have my own expenses and I'll just use my money to pay for that. And then we'll use a joint account to pay for our mortgage or our rent or our car. And so I know some people do it that way. I just think like there is a big freedom when you don't when everything is like on the same page, like in front of you. There's no hiding or anything.
There's nothing like how much do you have. Like, but then okay, I can see the other side of it though. Also, Ethan, where it's like, sure, we have this shared money, but now if it's shared money and like let's say I need like a huge amount of it for something that's mine.
Yeah.
Like let's say I need to help out a family member.
Yeah.
Like what happens then? Like I don't want to have to ask your permission. Or like I don't want to have to like convince you that yes, this family member is worth helping. Or like even though they're not very close to you, let's say. But then it's like going to the shared pool and I'm like, well, my money's in there too.
Yeah.
So I think in that situation it gets kind of tricky to have everything in the open. Or like let's say if you do have like maybe like, you know, because I think it's hard to say that you and your partner will always see eye to eye.
Yeah.
You know, I think there could totally be a moment where it's like, yeah, like this situation of like helping a family member in need. Like maybe your partner's like, no, actually, I think it's time to give them tough love and like da 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 da. And it's like, what do you do then? Because are you still taking money out of like the same joint pool?
Yeah. It's a great question, and that is like a whole monster in itself. Because let's say you have separate accounts,
right?
You're willing to use your own money to help your family member, but let's say it's not enough. Like you're gonna have to ask your partner if they can help a little bit, and so I think that one is not so cut and dry.
Right.
Obviously, like I think at the end of the day, you need your partner to be on board, because even if you drain out your bank account or you spend a lot, like you're gonna need enough money to take care of your own expenses too. Of course, like if you have more than enough money in your own bank account, that's one thing. But if you're in that situation, you've saved up and made that much money, and your money was in a pool, I think it's okay to like say, hey, I would like to use a significant amount of money to help my relative, because you have contributed so much money to the pool. So
but then it gets trickier again, just thinking about like different life situations, like when one person doesn't make the same amount as the other. So like, yes, we're contributing to the same pool, but maybe my contributions are like half of what your contributions can be.
Oh, for sure.
And then it's just like, what do you do then? I think it just overall just gets really tricky, because like instead of thinking of like you're as like an individual, like my problems are mine, my solutions are mine, my money is mine, you have to like think in this like group mentality.
Right. And I think that's a really hard thing for all of us to do. We live in a culture where everything is very focused on us and like individualism. And so, but I really think like, yes, it's uncomfortable to share your money and what you have earned yourself. But at the same time, when you pool your resources together, you're able to do something much greater in your life. Okay. So let's say you make a good amount of money. Having someone else to help is going to help both of you achieve your financial goals quicker.
That's true.
Another argument that I'll make for this is we all know high yield savings accounts. And the idea of compound interest is the more money you have in your bank account, the more like it's going to compound over time. So what I mean is $5,000 making money or making interest at 4% is going to get bigger faster than $1,000 growing at 4%.
Right.
So what I mean is there is a huge advantage to pool your money to make more money faster.
That's true.
And I think the other thing is this idea doesn't just apply to money. It applies to like sharing all parts of your life, your kitchen utensils, to your closet space, to the space on the bed. Of course, money feels very personal because it affects so many parts of our life. It feels like you
worked hard for it, and it feels like why would I listen to your opinion on like my money?
And I think if you're at that point, like maybe you don't want to get married.
Right.
I think that's like an indicator that you're not ready to really share. One like warning that I will give though is if you have a joint bank account, it is an opportunity for your partner to also control your money.
Yeah.
And there's been situations like financial abuse where that person is going to control that joint bank account and not let you use money from it.
Right.
So
Or just monitor how you're using it. Like,
Yeah.
I guess the main thing when Ethan's saying, you know, maybe you're not ready to be married is like, you really have to decide, like, do you trust this person? Are you comfortable with being in these sticky situations with them? And do you think you guys are able in a position where you can like talk through it and like work through it together?
Yeah. Exactly. And the main thing is to always be on the same page.
Yeah.
To ask the questions early before you get into that situation and just make sure that you both agree and you want the same thing. Okay, so let's talk about a very specific life scenario when you're living together. And let's say you're not married yet. This situation is very complicated because there's no like official commitments, but you guys have to figure out a financial plan together. And so I guess the question becomes what is the best way to handle finances?
I think that's like a super, super tricky question because you're right. Like, it's kind of like being with a roommate almost.
Yeah.
But it's like tricky because it's like, wait, what if I see like longevity, like beyond living together?
Yeah.
You know, so like, yeah, like I want to treat it like a roommate, but also it's like, why do we need to have two sets of like pots and pans? Let's just share one.
Yeah.
Or like, why, like, I don't know. I think a lot more stuff gets shared compared to when you're just like roommates.
Yeah.
But then it gets really tricky because like, I have friends who've talked about this. For example, if your boyfriend really, really, really likes to eat a lot of meat and like he just eats more quantity of food also, but like you're used to like girl dinnering a lot and like snacking and like, you know, your grocery bill just is a lot lower.
Yeah.
Then it's like, what do you do when you're sharing food? You know, like I just, like, let's say I can speak for myself. Like, I just eat less food. Like, eggs will sit in my fridge for like a month, I think.
Yeah.
You know, but like, you know, it's not the same with like a partner because they'll go through their stuff. So it's like, are you just splitting stuff 50-50? Is that like the best way to go about it? Or like, what is like the guideline for how you do it?
Exactly. And extrapolating from that, I'm sorry, like I'm not answering right away, but
No, it's all good.
this, like your example is great, but it points to like a bigger question where let's say you're making different amounts of money and it's like, should the person who's making more contribute more to paying rent? And so there's all these imbalances. It can be how much you make and how much you pay for rent to how much you eat, and are they paying more because they eat more and maybe they take longer showers, maybe
they do laundry way more. Like,
exactly.
It's just like each person, like, I think it's like very great in the beginning of a relationship, you just choose a person because you like them.
Yeah.
But I think like later on, like all of the differences really get highlighted.
Yeah.
And then it's like your kind of thing to figure out, how do I manage these differences?
For
like,
sure.
What do I do from here? I was thinking like about this grocery thing. Like a good kind of way to think about it for that one is like, you know, like, okay, you used to live separately and now you're going to live together. So you both individually should have an idea of like what your expenses used to look like.
Okay.
And ideally, when you live together in all categories, so let's say rent, transport, food, whatever it is, ideally you should see the net numbers going down because now you're together. Right? And if it starts to go up, like in the instance of girl dinner versus like man meals, like, you know, then maybe you're like, oh, maybe I'm like contributing too much to groceries and I should scale back. Like, I do think it's like a little bit of like a trial and error process. And I think like, you know, you can't call it being roommates because it's not very divided like that.
Yeah, so you're saying you would recommend like
Just
a way to
tracking.
keep track.
Yeah,
Okay.
or like not keep track because that sounds like annoying and like a lot of work.
Yeah.
But in terms of just like, okay, like going into it, you both know how much, like what your cost of living is, whether that's your shopping, your gym membership, your coffee runs, like you know what your cost of living is.
Yeah.
And then I guess, you know, when you are living together, those individual categories shouldn't really go up. What do you think?
Well, it's tricky. I think like theoretically that makes sense. And what I'm thinking is this is a good way to like understand the situation, but it doesn't fix any problems.
It doesn't.
Because what happens when that number goes up? Like ideally it goes down, like your expenses per month, but it could go up. Let's say like your partner gets you into a new hobby or their lifestyle. You're like, oh, this is actually really healthy, and I want to
move away from girl dinner.
Yeah, and I want to like start taking like protein or creatine after my workouts, or
even
I want
car
to have
car payments are like another thing. Like, let's say if one of you has like car payments, and then like they're driving you around, or like they have to like there's gas, there's this, there's that, and it's like maybe you were happy being like a commuter before your partner, but now you have like all these other expenses, and it's like I guess I'm just adding more problems. And not giving any solution.
Exactly. So I think the thing is you can't guarantee if your expenses will go down or if they'll go up. Hypothetically, it could go down.
Right.
But let's say that doesn't happen. Like you have an impending fight on your hands unless you actually like figure out a good game plan.
Okay.
And so I think it's a soft warning about living together before you're married.
Yeah.
Because the main issue at stake is commitment.
Yeah.
Because if that person is seriously committed to you, then I think the key is to make a game plan that you're both okay with. The thing is that at the end of the day, there's no binding commitment between you two. Like either one of you can leave at any time, and there's a lot of financial implications at stake, especially when it comes to your lease or your monthly payments together. So I think if you're gonna do this, you need to make sure that the commitment is solid. If the commitment is solid, then you can have tough conversations like, hey, you make more money than I do, and paying this rent for the two of us, like splitting down the middle, is going to be a little hard on my side. Would you be willing to pay more for our apartment or our house? And if you're shaky about having that conversation, it's a signal for you to revisit how the foundation of your relationship. If you're able to have those conversations and you guys can come to an agreement without fighting, it's a good sign that like the commitment is strong. But just know that there's no guarantees doing this at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think I really like what you said. There is like a really big risk that you were taking, and I don't want to make this episode about like living together before marriage, because we've already had that episode, but you bring up a really good point about like like it feels really like probably not very comfortable or not very good, but you do need to sit down and talk about like, okay, like what happens if we break up and I can't afford this rent by myself, like, and we can't be in the same space, like are we moving out, or like what happens like when we're moving in together, and like let's say like we're using all of my furniture and all of this stuff, and like what about you? Are you gonna have to rebuy everything if we break up? Like it's just like a lot of like, I think everybody knows finances add a lot of stress, and like that's what makes it tricky, the living together, because it's like you have the potential for financial ease and more time together and this and that, and it's great, but then you also have potential for like everything could like crash and burn, and then you're stressed out.
Right. And I think the gem in what we've been talking about and what you just brought up, Sania, is that you need to have those hard conversations before getting into it. And just know what happens when, like, if this doesn't work out, and who's going to take the apartment, who's going to pay for this and that, who's going to take the couch. And I think, like, that's the only way where you can't be ready for every situation, but at least like you're both very clear about how you're going to tackle this together.
Yeah, like at least you've come up with a game plan of like, what do we do in all these different situations?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like you figure out every situation, you go down a list, but definitely the big stuff, and then like...
Because it could be really good, like, you know, like if you happen to live together before getting married, like maybe that's a chance for you guys to both save up a lot and like get closer to your goal of buying a house.
Yeah.
But you just really have to like, I think if you take it on as like, okay, we're in this, we're a team, like I respect your money as much as I respect mine.
Yeah.
And like I respect and understand your expenses.
Yeah.
Because I think it also gets tricky if like, you know, you don't want to be in like, I think not in the living together stage, and definitely probably not when you're married either. You don't want to nag the other person.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you just went and got another coffee from Starbucks. Like, we should be saving. Like, you don't want it to turn into that. I feel like that's like a thing people want to avoid. So, you know, maybe like you guys come up with a plan and like you come up with a budget. This is how much we as a unit would like to save.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can split that down the middle and each person can put their savings in their own investment. So it's still a little bit, you know, separated if you're not at that stage of marriage where everything is combined. And then each person gets like, you know, their fun money, and like each person has like this and that. And you just, like you said, you work it out based on how much each person is making. And you just come up with something that everyone's comfortable with.
Yeah, well, it's a choice to figure out based on how much each person is making. Maybe you guys want to split down the middle. Yeah. So we can't just assume.
That's fair. That's fair.
And that's why you need to have that conversation. I think one other thing that I want to add on this topic is that you need to be ready for consistent conversations about this, because things are going to change, and you're going to, like, you can't just have this conversation at the beginning and it never comes up again. I think one thing that happens a lot is the person who makes more money feels taken advantage of, because the person who makes less money, well, they're thinking, well, my partner makes more money, it's okay if they pay for more things.
Yeah.
But then the person who's making more money is like, I
could have done XYZ else with my money rather than putting it here.
Exactly, and they're making me pay for everything. And so, like, when you reach those points where
you're starting to feel bad
and you're uncomfortable from both sides, you'll have to talk about it.
I think another big thing, sorry to cut you off, but just that you just made me think of.
We agreed to never cut each other off, Sania, when we first started this.
We don't have a solid foundation. We don't have anything in writing.
That's true. What? That's true.
But something that I just thought of, that while you were explaining this, like, we're so focused on like, yes, this person is contributing more money, but a huge part of it that we're not considering is like the effort that people are putting into it.
Yeah.
Like, sure, you could be putting in more money, but like, I'm folding your laundry, I'm keeping the house clean, I'm cooking most of the time. Like, that's my time. My time is also worth money, right?
Yeah.
So then it gets like, even just having this conversation, I'm like, wow, it gets like so nitty gritty. Like, how detailed do you want to go into this? Like, you know, and is it like if we split responsibilities, like, and the other person's not able to do theirs, like, are you going to pull back financially? Like,
yeah.
I think you're right. It is just like, it's a big like wake up call if you're starting to think about these things and you're not able to have these conversations, like that, like maybe you should like slow things down a little bit.
Right. And I love what you just said. I think that talking about money is important. You don't have to like hit every item in your list. But then I think having a general game plan is super helpful to set everyone's expectations. So let's say I was making less money in my relationship and I'm going to live with my partner before we're married. I would have to say, I don't know if I can afford half the rent. Would you be willing to pay for more of the rent?
And I think it's one good thing to do to avoid conflict. Is to not like, I guess not keep comparing to like, oh, but if I was living alone, I would be doing this. Oh, if I was living alone, I would be saving this much. Like, why should I do this?
Yeah, for
Because,
sure.
you know, like that was like a big thing that we sort of talked about, where it's like, if you keep comparing it to that and keep like backsliding, that's not any way forward.
Yeah. And then continuing on what I was saying, you can talk about the money, but it's also important to set expectations on everything else. And so, like, if I was making less money, I would say, I want to take the lead on planning dates. I want to, I'm going to clean like X amount of times this week, and I'm going to cook like X amount of times this week. Like, are you okay with that? Like, do you feel like I am putting in effort? Let me know that if I'm not. And
it almost becomes like a contract of words, you know, like you guys come to a mutual understanding about roles and responsibilities.
Yeah. And so I think if you're not ready for that kind of grown-up conversation, it's like, think about this again. Make sure that you're ready for this conversation, because it's going to be a lot. And there's a lot of like things to figure out before jumping into this. It's not, it is like fun and nice, but there's a lot of responsibilities that think about.
And you just have to feel like you're mature enough and you're at a strong enough place in your relationship to, like Ethan said, these conversations will keep coming up, and to be able to keep having them without getting heated. Yeah,
I'm okay on this now, I think. But I don't know if you have any other questions, Sania. Like, maybe this hits very close to home for one of your friends, and like maybe they have more questions about this.
I don't know. I think it was just, you know, I feel like we sort of circled around a lot of like, you know, potential things to think about.
Yeah.
And I feel like the main solution that we're coming back to over and over, which is like a consistent theme in any relationship, is just your communication.
Yeah.
And like that's what it comes down to. And like it's okay if you're feeling uncomfortable. That just means maybe you should slow down a little bit.
Yeah. And make sure like you do feel comfortable having those conversations. Okay, so the next question, and this is a big topic when it comes to having the money talk, is like, as a girl and as a guy, do girls and guys really care about how much money their partner makes? And do they care if they make more money than their partner? Like how big of a difference is okay? Like, would you be okay with a big difference?
I'm definitely going to get blamed for this, but as a girl, I would love my partner to make like way more money than me.
Okay.
Just mostly because of the fact that, again, not like I've had these conversations, but like because of the fact that I'm happy to take on more of like the in-house responsibilities.
Yeah.
But I would love it if you can take on like all the non-in-house, like all the bills, all this, like the planning of the dates, like the, I don't know, vacations and dinners, and like everything can kind of be yours.
Yeah.
Like the home is my domain, and I would love that.
For sure. And what you're saying behind all of that is, it feels nice when the guy in the relationship is able to provide, because it makes you feel safe and cared for.
And it's not like the girl is not providing. I feel like we talk about, you know, a stay-at-home wife a lot, like she's doing nothing, but it's like she is providing inside the home. Yeah. And like realistically, that's where you spend most of your life.
Okay. Now I'm going to just like challenge you a little bit.
Okay.
So let's say this podcast became like a huge hit, and we're making really good money off it.
Right. I think I know where this is going.
Let's say like we're making $200K. Is your statement still standing that you want the guy to make significantly more than you? Because you're making a huge amount already in this hypothetical situation.
Would I want the guy to still make more than me?
Or you said significantly.
Right.
So I'm just trying to figure out, like, is it because of how much money you're making now that you're saying that? Or is it just you want him to be financially independent and have enough to still take care of you?
I think that's the second thing that you just said.
Okay, so
that's the end goal.
Let's say you're making a boatload of money, $500K a year.
Right.
He could be making way less than that and still have enough to take care of you.
I think that's the main thing that, as a girl, that I'm after. That like you just have that provider mentality.
Okay.
And like even if we like, because businesses go through ups and downs. Like, you know, rich people lose their money all the time. Jobs, you can lose your job.
Yeah.
But I just want to feel safe and like, wow, like you can take care of me like regardless of what you have. Like I just never want it to be like, if I am making $500K, I don't want to talk about what my contribution is and what I'm doing with my money.
Yeah.
As a girl, I want my money to always be like extra.
Okay.
I want the responsibility to feel like, you know, like the guy's got the responsibility.
Okay.
I'm happy to live in a tiny little shoebox apartment even if I make 500K, as long as I'm feeling like you have the responsibility and you've got us.
Okay. So just to like understand a little bit, I'm not trying to challenge you. Okay, so you know my salary.
Right.
And like how much money I'm taking home.
Right.
That like we might have to like live in a shoebox apartment like
but that's okay.
Whoever I'm with.
Right. If that's what the girl wants, I feel like every girl is probably also different. And like I'm trying to imagine a scenario where I make like double, triple what I'm making right now.
Yeah, that would be nice.
And like, you know what? But the girl can still do stuff to like spruce things up. Like it could be a shoebox, but it could be a very nice shoebox.
Okay.
You know? And like maybe if at some point she feels like, you know what, like I'm earning like so much more than you.
Yeah.
Like I guess the goal is like in general in traditional dating, like the girl just wants to feel like the girl.
Okay.
So like maybe at some point she is like, you know what, like maybe we can get a nicer apartment and I'd like to start paying for it.
Yeah.
It's still like I guess the main goal is like she should still be able to feel like a girl while she's doing it.
Okay.
Like like it should never become an excuse. Like I've definitely seen like marriages and relationships where the guys will sort of like be piggybacking off of their girlfriend.
Yeah.
And that's not about whose credit card is put on the table. It's more about like your mentality and your attitude towards responsibilities. Is your attitude like, oh yeah, she's got us?
Yeah.
Or is it like, no, I have this, but I'm going to make it work?
Yeah. Okay. One last question on this is there's these situations where let's say like a guy quits his job, decides to try to start a podcast and is driven, but there's no immediate success on the horizon. So he's like basically making no money.
Right.
Is that someone that you would still want to date? Like they can't even afford a shoebox apartment.
Well, I would hope that like at least they have some savings. Like I guess I would never want to feel like, I guess the main thing that I'm trying to avoid as a girl, regardless of how much money I make or how much my partner makes, is just like I don't want to feel the burden of all the responsibilities.
Yeah.
So like, sure, you want to try out a podcast, you want to try a business venture, and it's not doing very good. That's okay. We can all scale back our spending. We can like come up with a plan together. And like, of course, like if we need my salary to keep the lights on, like I'm going to do that. I'm not like a bad person about it, but I want to still feel like you've still got it, that you're not like, because an alternate scenario, which is very similar, but the only difference is like the mentality and what the end goal is like gambling. People can be gambling away all of their money.
Right.
And they're like, oh, but we're going to get it. And like, I'm going to make it big. And then, and it's like, no, I'm so sorry. Like,
that's why I told Sania when we started this. Okay. I think you're completely right. And to piggyback off what you're saying is that I don't think you're going to get flamed anymore. I think like based on my questions, we've realized like the money is actually not super important. It's like them making you feel safe and cared for.
Right.
And a lot of times having a lot of money helps with that.
Right.
But it's not everything.
It's not.
And let's say this person is really driven. They are such a hard worker. I think that it's your job, like if they're trying to launch a podcast, they're trying to like get into crypto, that you make sure they have a very clear plan and that they are actually responsible with their plans and they're not
like
actually
squandering away their money. Yeah,
exactly. And I think in that case, like you would be willing to come alongside them and support them,
definitely,
knowing that this is not supposed to be a forever thing, and that there is a plan to get out of this, even if it doesn't work out.
I think even though it's like good that we talked about this and it's like, okay, like what is ideally, what do you want, what does your partner want, I think when you're in that situation of when, let's say, the girl makes more money than the guy, it's like, how do you go about having that discussion? You know? And it's like, how do you talk about like what you're actually wanting? And stuff like that. Because like there are definitely like people out there that would be happy to just like do nothing. And just be taken care of.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay. I think I'm good then. Okay. So we're going to move on to our end segment now. And we're bringing back red flag, green flag. It's been a while since we've done one of these. So we have a few situations and we're going to say whether it's a red flag, beige flag, or a green flag. Okay, so the first one, they're always late.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Wow, okay. Red flag for you, beige flag for me.
I'm
Okay.
trying to be strict.
Oh, okay. Were you debating between beige flag,
I
red
was
flag?
between beige or red.
Okay.
I went red because even though I think it's a red flag because at the end of the day it means they don't value your time as much as they value their own. Because they're constantly making you wait.
I hear you on that, but what I've learned recently is that they can value your time. They just have a terrible sense of
Time management?
or like how long things take. They're overly optimistic all the time when it comes to time.
Okay.
And so a lot of times they're not intentionally
Okay.
trying to like be disrespectful or like ruin plans.
I
but
see.
They're like,
Okay, maybe I can go up to a beige flag. I think
Okay.
it depends on the intention.
Yeah.
If they are like just like, you know, I think there was a point in my life when I was going on like dates and stuff like that, and I was always like, I'm gonna start getting ready 15 minutes before,
Yeah.
and it was like planned that they can wait 15 minutes at least.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So like that is probably more red flag, and that's why I think I went red flag.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. If they're trying to be on time but like things happen or they're being optimistic, like, you know what, my nails should only take me this long or my hair should only take me this long and it takes longer.
Yeah.
It's okay. You can have a little leeway.
I think the difference is like for a professional relationship, like if they're not on time, that's a red flag.
Okay.
Because there's already like a certain expectation.
Right.
When it comes to relationships, I don't think it's necessarily a red flag. It's important to know their intention.
Right.
But then I think if you're on the receiving end and the other person is late, this is something that I've learned recently and I've been trying to get better at myself is to kind of plan around it.
Okay.
And so maybe like I'll bring a book or
Okay.
maybe I'll like create the next podcast outline while I'm
Right.
waiting.
Okay.
And it doesn't ever have to feel like a waste of time.
Okay.
And so maybe I make the reservation 30 minutes later, but I don't tell my partner. And so we
Yeah.
always have a little
You
bit
find
of wiggle
ways.
room. And so I think it doesn't have to bother you as much as it could.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
decide if you let it bother you, kind of.
Definitely.
Your
yeah.
perspective on it, you can take it as like, oh, she's wasting my time by making me wait.
Yeah.
Or you could be like, you know what, I can use this time to do X amount of other things.
Definitely. So,
Okay.
and then I think one other distinction is like if it's only affecting your partner, like they can adjust, but also like you should make your intentions clear that you don't mean any harm.
Right.
If it's affecting more people,
Oh, yeah.
like you're hanging out with a group of friends, then that's a little less considerate, especially if you guys were
Like you want them to plan around their optimism and be like, no,
Yeah.
no, but still give yourself extra time. Okay, that's fair. Yeah, it comes down to respect.
Yeah. Okay. Next one. This is a big one. They don't ask you to be their Valentine. They don't explicitly say the word.
Yeah. Well, I've definitely gotten flamed in real life for this one. Because a lot of people assume that you're somebody's Valentine because
Yeah.
you've been together so long,
Right.
and they think it's just like a silly little thing. Like, why would you even need to ask? Every day can be Valentine's Day. Like, I've heard all of those things.
Yeah.
I think in principle, like, I keep talking for the girls, and I'm like, oh, the girl just wants to feel special. The boy also wants to feel special, and it just feels special to like be celebrating your love and like asking them officially to be your Valentine, and like,
Yeah.
you know, that kind of sets the stage for like, oh, that means we're doing something different out of the ordinary for Valentine's Day. It's not just a regular date night. Like,
Wait, we never said red flag or green flag.
oh,
We just started talking.
my bad. I'm gonna say red flag.
Red flag for me too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
why,
nice.
why are you surprised?
Well, I don't know. Just because, like I said, I got blamed for this a lot.
Oh, okay. I think you make great points that it's getting them excited. It's setting the stage for doing something nice for your partner. And we're like this is a very intentional like day every year to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not like you're doing this like
Yeah.
twice a week or something.
Right. And it's not taking something out of your life to do it, you know?
Right.
It's pretty simple to do. Like, you
Yeah.
know, like, again, you're just celebrating your love.
Yeah, definitely. One last thing about that is I get, as a guy, it feels like a little self-conscious because it feels like you are exposing your feelings when you ask someone to be your Valentine, and it's like, oh, this feels very sappy, like I'm not that kind of person. And dude, it's a simple question. You don't have to make it more sappy than it is. I get it in your head. It sounds very sappy, and it like you're not into rom-coms and stuff like that. But the words mean a lot.
They do.
And so,
and just the intention, just that it's like a cute thing to do. We're saying it's a red flag if you don't do it, because it just like feels like you don't care a little bit, and that's why it's a red flag.
Yeah, it can come off that way.
Yes.
So,
especially, sorry, and I will asterisk my red flag and say, like, it's a red flag if you guys have talked about, like, Valentine's and, like, being asked and, like, how it's important to, like, maybe your girlfriend or whatever. Like, it becomes a red flag if you, like, obviously are choosing to not care about what's important.
Right. And for the guys out there, I want to reassure you, like, it does not reduce your manliness at all. It's just a question, and it makes the other person feel like they're thought of and cared for. Okay, the last one, they're good with kids.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Obviously a green flag.
Easy green flag. I guess to make this conversation a little more interesting, what goes through your head when they're not good with kids, Sania?
When they're not good with kids, I feel like kids need a lot of patience and they need a lot of support. So when somebody is not very good with kids, aside from the obvious of making me think like, oh, maybe like they don't want kids, or maybe they're not going to be good with my kids, or when I have kids, it just makes me feel like, oh, like maybe this person isn't as selfless or patient or like caring and like aware. Like kids need a lot of like support and like you just need to pay a lot of attention to them. So it just feels like they're lacking in those qualities. Because a kid is like the extreme of all of those, you know? Like, sure, you might care about me, you might make sure, like, I'm safe on the streets or whatever, but, like, a baby, like, anything can hurt them, you know? You just have to be a different level of, like, vigilant and caring.
For sure. I also think there's a learning curve, and maybe, like, your partner has never grown up around kids, and maybe they just don't have a lot of experience, and so they don't really know what to do. And so I will say, like, it's an extra plus if they're good with kids. If they don't have a lot of experience, they can learn to be, and it is important, especially because I think that a lot of us, like, when we think about our family background and how we grew up, we don't agree with everything our parents did.
Yeah.
But someone who's good with kids, like, they have put in work to figure out how to, like, navigate family dynamics.
Okay. That's super true.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah. All right. So we hope this episode was good for all of you, especially thinking about money, because it's probably not talked about enough, but it's it's such a hidden but important thing in our relationship. And we'll catch you guys in the next one.